In today's review, I'm going to be talking about Lagoon's Haunt event, which is called Frightmares. So like most amusement parks, every October they deck the park out with Halloween decorations, fill it with mazes, scare actors, and this is a very popular event. Because this is the only amusement park in all of Utah, they're going to attract a larger crowd because they don't really have anyone to compete with besides local haunts. So that means that this is going to be a very crowded event. When I went, it was absolutely packed. And from what I've heard, it's like that every weekend in October. Now, the actual event consists of 5 mazes. Funhouse of Fear is a clown 3D maze. Zombie Lockdown is a prison-themed zombie outbreak type maze. Frightening Frisco is like a western maze, and that is their new for 2016 maze. Terrors of the Past is kind of a mishmash of different things. You have a high school section, horror movies, a labyrinth type area, and then Nightwalk is going to be your vampire themed maze. They also have a couple of shows, including the one that I thought was the coolest, a chainsaw show where a bunch of people are basically just dancing with chainsaws. Pretty neat. And then they also have a singing and dancing show that was pretty good. But the thing I thought was most disappointing about Frightmares by far was the fact that there was only one scare zone. And I think using the word scare in it is a bit of an exaggeration because this is not a scare zone. You go to a Cedar Fair park, Six Flags, Busch Gardens, whatever, you're going to see scare zones where it's a bunch of monsters wandering around, being all frightening and stuff, and it's super cool. This is not a scare zone. What they call a scare zone is a pathway that you walk along and enter kind of like it's a maze, except it's outside. And you just walk along and look at theming. I think there was one monster there, and he was at the entrance to welcome you in. Everything else was just theming, such as spiders, witch animatronics, gravestones. I mean, the decorations were cool and all, but it was pathetic. Calling it a scare zone is not an accurate representation of what this is. So that was what I thought was most disappointing. And that's why if you look through this footage, you won't really see too many opportunities of actors getting all up in the face of the camera, because if you want to see scare actors, really, when you're going to be able to see them is when you are actually in a maze or in line for a maze, because the maze lines are so long and they don't have switchbacks to hold these lines. The lines are just spilling out onto the midways. So to occupy time, they have a bunch of scare actors just kind of wandering around and talking or scaring the people in line. So that is going to be your only other opportunity where you're really going to be able to film or take photos of these monsters. And I think that is certainly cool because at these other parks, you aren't really getting these scare actors to entertain people in line. So I thought that this was really cool how they did that. But I just can't get over the fact that they didn't even really have a real scare zone. That being said, they do have subtle theming throughout the entire park, such as gravestones on the midway, some fog. But let's talk about the mazes for a bit. So obviously they only have 5 mazes, not too many compared to what most amusement parks have. For a park this size that has 10 roller coasters and is a pretty large park, you'd think that they would have more mazes, and I definitely think that they should. But the 5 mazes that they have are long. These are good like 7 to 8, 9-minute walkthroughs. And unlike some of these other mazes at your classic Cedar Fair or Six Flags parks, these are like actual mazes. There's like dead ends, multiple pathways you can take. Not throughout the entire thing, but just some moments where it's like, okay, you could go here or you could go here. They all end up at the same place, but that was something that I thought was super different and pretty neat. Now, looking specifically at the mazes, Funhouse of Fear, the clown 3D one, I thought was the tamest one. It's not scary at all. You just kind of put on 3D glasses, go through some like fun theming, but it's not scary. Then Zombie Lockdown. That one wasn't bad, but the main thing is that you're just walking through hallways of zombies in prison. None of them actually break out. They're just kind of behind the bars, trying to grab you and stuff. So that one I didn't really think was too scary either. Frightening Frisco wasn't bad. This was by far the shortest maze there. I'd say it took less than 5 minutes to go through. But it was mainly made up of like different rooms, not pathways. So each of these rooms have, say, a sheriff's office or like a bar that you'd go up to. So there are definitely opportunities for you to wander around and see different monsters, but there also weren't too many monsters in it, so I was kind of expecting a bit more with it being new for 2016 and all. But that was just my experience for it. Obviously these mazes and how scary they are going to differ per person per visit. So this was just my experience at the end of the month. It might have been completely different at the beginning of the month or on the same night. I did do it early on in the day, so maybe it was better later in the day. We don't know. But let's move on to Terrors of the Past. Even though the theme for this was kind of vague, it was just kind of a mishmash of different stuff, and it just kept on randomly changing subjects. It was super long, and there were some good scare moments, which I liked. My personal favorite was Nightwalk, the vampire-themed one. I thought this one was really well done. There were some moments inside and outside. It stuck to a theme. You had this cave-like hallway with a bunch of bats, spiders, and like vampires. There was this one moment where it was like they were chanting or like calling to the undead or something. It was super creepy, but really cool. So that one I thought was by far the best executed maze. But let me just say, if you want to be able to do all these mazes, I would recommend going on a Friday and not a Saturday. Only go on a Saturday if you plan on buying the Time Warp Pass, which allows you to skip the lines. You get 7 skip the line passes, and since there are 5 mazes, that means you can skip the lines for 2 mazes twice. And these mazes, I mean, they all had at least an hour-and-a-half line, probably more. It was so incredibly packed. I've never seen Lagoon this crowded before. But I guess that's what I get for going Halloween weekend. So I think just in general, overall, I was kind of a bit underwhelmed with Frightmares. There are definitely some good scare opportunities, and I liked how the mazes were unique and different compared to other parks. But by far, the thing that just bothered me the most was that the only scare zone that they have isn't even a real scare zone. One of my favorite parts of going to these Halloween events is going through the scare zones, because it gives the actors freedom to just wander around, scare whoever. You get to see cool theming, you get to see the park transformed, and it just wasn't really like that. The park just had an overall theme where there was just a bunch of gravestones and such, but I did not like how there wasn't a real scare zone. The only thing that I would say remotely resembled a scare zone was that the chainsaw people at one point after the show were just kind of hanging around near the stage, and as you walked through it, they'd kind of run at you with their chainsaws. But that was just like 4 or 5 dudes, and there wasn't any theme in the area. It wasn't any different. That was just where they were hanging around. So that was probably the closest you'd get to a scare zone, because what the park actually calls a scare zone, as far as I'm concerned, is not a scare zone. So overall, that is going to be my review for Frightmares. If I had to give a piece of advice, I would say if you are going on a Saturday, definitely get the Time Warp Pass unless you want to wait 2 hours for each maze. But if you'd like to avoid all that, I'd say probably go on a Friday in like September or early October. You'd probably be able to avoid those crowds. But if you have experienced Frightmares, make sure to let me know what you thought of it in the comment section below. So I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to stay tuned for more videos relating to roller coasters or Lagoon specifically. If you're looking for more Halloween videos, I have a bunch on my channel from different parks across the country. So make sure to check those out, and I'll catch you guys later.